and can run for help. And you had my emergency contact number as well, so that kind of reduced that risk. Another example, road accident, I mentioned, students supervised, you'll want to be road safe and be careful of the roads. We could lose someone, again, that's why we're in groups of 3, why we've got emergency contact. I'm sure you can think of more, but there's a few ideas for you. So flip over the page once you're done. This is the point where I want you to get the big map that Miss Marshall will have at the front for you. And it's a big version of that sort of Google Street View that you had actually on the trip. Now, I know some of your groups did this land use survey and some of you just did the questionnaires. Those of you who are doing the land use survey had a few problems because of the rain. Lots of people's work got so wet that you couldn't continue writing on it. So we have bits and pieces of data, but not a full data set. You can use the filled in ones that are at the front, the ones from the trip, but like I said, they're incomplete. Or what I would suggest is the better way of doing things, so you all get to experience it, is load up Google Earth. Do that now. Type in East Wittering. Obviously in England, there are different West Witterings, so make sure you get the right one. Should be along the south coast. When you get there, make sure you make sure north is north, and you should get this sort of pattern in the centre of East Wittering. So the beach is just down here somewhere, just down here, so you can orientate yourself. And then we've got a long road in the middle called Shore Road. If you really can't find it, Google Shore Road in East Wittering, and you better find it. And at the top, you've got this strange sort of circular section. Now, this is where the Tesco was, where we all huddled outside in the rain, and that's that sort of straight road that went across. And then there's a long road down here, and if we went down Marine Drive, that was where we parked the car and the van over here. So find this little section. What you'll find is anything south of Marine Drive was all residential property. So we had no retail, no food, no accommodation or anything down here. So you can kind of ignore that bit, to be honest. But from Marine Drive upwards and then both directions, you need to fill in the boxes with 2 different things. First of all, give it a number. And actually, I've adapted these slightly, so do ignore these ones. There's a number that associates to what type of property it is. Is it retail? Is it food? Is it accommodation? Is it a service? Is it other? And then you need to give it, again, on the big sheet, it tells you this, you need to give it a T for if it is more geared towards tourists, you think, than locals, or an L if you think it's more geared towards locals than tourists. So example, the Co-op would probably be geared towards both, wouldn't it? Because tourists might go there for a sandwich, locals might go there for their bread and milk in the morning. But locals are more likely to use it on a regular basis. It is there as a convenience shop for locals. Whereas a little bit along from the Co-op, if you remember, there was a bit of a weird shop kind of selling, I don't know, weird things that hang from the ceiling, and it had buckets and spades and nets and things like that. Things selling buckets and spades and nets are things for beach goers. They are more for tourists than locals. Again, the surf shop was more for tourists than locals. Things like restaurants, again, locals would use them, but most of their trade's probably from tourists. So use your common sense a little bit and code them as best you can. So each little box on that diagram should have a letter, T or L, and a number of 1 to 5. Just to note, accommodation should refer to anything that's, not a normal house. So a B&B or a hotel or something like that. If it's just a normal bog standard house that someone that's local that lives there, put 5 as other for that one. Once you're done with that, what you'll need to do is you'll need to add them all up. So add up how many 1s you got, how many 2s, how many 3s, how many 4s, how many 5s, and then how many T's and how many L's you got. Once you totaled them all up, so it's right total there, that will give you a rough idea of what things appear to be the most popular. But the thing that will make this more usable in terms of data is I want you to work out what percentage that is. So what percentage of things are retail? What percentage of those units were food outlets? What percentage were more geared towards tourists and more geared towards locals? The way you do that is, I think one of the other people in the other group added them all up, and I think there were 92 boxes that you could have filled in. So say, for example, for retail, you found that 12 of the units were retail. Put 12, divide it by the total, which was 92. And then if you press enter first and then times that by 100, it will give you your percentage. Work that out, and this is probably the one that's going to be the most important to you. What percentage of those units are more geared towards tourists? That will help us answer our question of, is tourism important to East Wittering? So stop the video now and fill that bit in and fill your little map in. Once you're done with that, again, turn over. I've filled in some of this for you. It's now what we call writing your methodology. So step by step, you need to describe how you did the land use survey. Now, obviously, we've now come back into the classroom and we're going to use Google Street View to do that. But just imagine you did that in the field. Some of you did do that in the field. And this is an example of how detailed it needs to be. So, sorry, excuse the dogs in the background. And imagine you're doing it from scratch, so you're kind of me. So first of all, divide you into groups and give you a section of the transect of the land use map. So not all of you did the whole section, you did little sections of it. Then you assess each shop front to determine the type of service, for example, accommodation or retail. Assess each type of shop front to determine if it's more local or more tourist. Collate the data back in the classroom, which is what you did a second ago. Work out totals and percentages ready for analysis. That is 5 steps for something that really is very, very simple to do. But you've got to kind of think about it. If you were teaching a complete idiot who'd never done it before, from start to finish, how to collect that data and what you're going to do with it, that's what you kind of need to be thinking. So justification and method. How will this enable you to answer your hypothesis? So how is this stage of doing these things going to help you work out how many people are tourists? And again, this bit's going to be the key bit here, isn't it? Once you've got percentages, that will give you an accurate idea of how important tourism is to East Wittering. Strengths and weaknesses down the bottom, have a think about that. You, by all means, do that in pairs or in small groups and collate your ideas, absolutely fine. But, did you have any problems with it? Obviously, rain and weather wasn't with us on that one, so you could put that as a weakness. But again, it's your opinion, isn't it? Someone might see a particular type of shop and think it's more tourist, and someone might think it's more local. It's down to your personal opinion. So some of this could be biased. So they're going to be some of your strengths and weaknesses. Again, stop the video now and do that bit if you haven't already done. Then we come onto your questionnaire. What I've done already is I've taken all the questionnaire data that you collected, and there were, I think, 21 different people who were surveyed, which is good. We've got quite a good sample there. And I've put them all onto a Google Sheet. I will share that with you. I'll put it on Classroom. I'll try and remember to send it to Miss Marshall as well, so that she's got a copy to give to you if I forget. And it collates all this information, so you can have a little look through at the questionnaire responses. Then again, do the same thing that you did with the last method. Write step by step how you collected that data, right from me putting you into groups to me assigning you locations to go and stand. How did you approach people? What did you say when you approached people to make them want to talk to you? You then asked some different questions. We then came back to the classroom. We've collated that data, put it in a table ready to use. Justification, again, how is that going to help you to answer your hypothesis? You might want to have a look back at some of the responses. That might give you some clues as to how it will help you answer. We also use something called a stratified sampling strategy. I would like you to Google that. I'd like you to work out what it is, because then you'll learn about different types of sampling method. And just assess on here whether we actually got to use that method or not. Again, that will then help you to fill out the strengths and weaknesses bit. So stop the video and complete that bit. Beyond that, we're not able to do very much. So I'm hoping that that is the point you get to by the end of the lesson. What we will then do is, you've already got some of the data. So you've got the totals from the land use survey and you've got the answers from the questionnaire. What I'm going to do before I see you next is put together some graphs. You've obviously already got a map. We've got some, aerial sort of images as well. I'll put the graphs and charts together, and then I'll let you have a copy so you can stick them in this section here. Also, we'll try and print off a little copy of your questionnaire responses so we can stick down there as well, because we can't yet do that until we've got the data sort of presented in graph form. When we've done that bit, you'll then be able to do the analysis as well, although you might be able to start because you'll have the responses to the questionnaire and you'll have the land use survey totals and percentages at least as well. So you could, if you get to that point, perhaps go on and answer some of this, and then you'll end up with our conclusions. Again, we can't draw the conclusions until we've got all the data. And the only section that is after that is a little evaluation and reflection. So just completed your land use survey and questionnaire, examine the table. Could any of these points be applied to your methods? So in terms of any of these things, did any of these things go wrong? Could any of these things be improved on? So timing, for example, perhaps we could have gone at a different time of day so we didn't just get retired people that we were surveying, which is what we seem to get. Sample size, again, could we have potentially got a few more people to get more reliable data? Issues of the day, obviously weather was a big one for us, so it gives you some points to talk about in terms of evaluating the actual trip and the fieldwork data collection itself. I'll be quiet now, all right, and leave you to it. I hope your lesson's good. Hope you get to this point, and I will see you next week. Bye.